Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar about lawyer opportunities in prep through CPLED. Before we get started, I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about the GoToWebinar software that we'll be using. So you should have on the right-hand side of your screen a side panel. And if you want to expand that panel, you click on the orange arrow button, and that'll show you all the features. On the side panel, you'll see that there's an area for you to type questions, and you can type those questions in throughout the webinar. We have staff here who will compile those questions throughout the webinar session, and she'll then ask me those questions at the end of the presentation during our Q&A session. There's also handouts on the side panel, and those are today's PowerPoint. So under handouts, you can access the presentation. Also at the end of the webinar, when you close out the window, there's a brief 2-minute survey which will pop up, and we'd really appreciate if you would take some time to complete that survey, because it'll help us refine the presentation as we go forward. I also wanted to mention that we're recording the webinar and we'll be posting on our website later. So I'm Erica Green, and I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in a few minutes. The first thing I wanted to go over is what the agenda is for our meeting today. So we'll start with introductions. Then we'll talk a little bit about the CPLED competency framework, which is the underlying framework for the entire prep program. I'll give you an overview of prep, and then an overview of each of the roles: Foundation Workshop Facilitator, Virtual Law Firm Assessor, Practice Manager, and Capstone Assessor. So as I said, my name is Erica Green. I started out in private practice in a small place in Nova Scotia called Bridgewater, and I was there for approximately 15 years. I then took a short break from the practice of law, and when I returned, I actually took up employment with the Nova Scotia Barristers Society in their education department. In conjunction with that, I've had an opportunity to work with CPLED on prep from the beginning, and I've been involved in all the various aspects from development through to actually fulfilling each of these roles that we're going to be talking about today. So I've done facilitation, I've done assessment, and I've practice managed students. And right now I'm filling in as the education manager for CPLED. So I'm going to just move now into the competency framework. As I said, it's really the underpinnings and the backbone of the prep program. And it was created to make sure that, students had the knowledge and competencies they needed at an entry level when they got called to the bar. So we created this competency framework, taking into consideration the competencies previously offered by CPLED, as well as competency frameworks from numerous other sources. And basically we look at, not just the students needing knowledge, but that they need to demonstrate the competencies and show that they have the skills and character to practice law. New lawyers need communication skills, understanding about how to practice, as well as those skills of empathy, compassion, integrity, respect, ethical practice, and commitment to best serve the public and their clients effectively. And so as part of the redesign of this bar admission program, which is available to students in Alberta, Manitoba, Nova Scotia, and Saskatchewan, we developed the new CPLED competency framework to help guide both the students, the instructors, and the assessors in understanding what specific skills and abilities prep was looking for the students to develop. And basically the idea is that we focus on the whole lawyer, what the lawyer does, how a lawyer practices, as well as who a lawyer is and how they behave. So the first part is the lawyer skills, so what a lawyer does. And basically from the first time a student or a lawyer meets with a client right to the closing of the file, there's a lot of skills that they need to demonstrate. everything from dealing with unique situations, considering options, research and analyzing research, coming up with solutions, and managing the file both administratively as well as managing any client issues along the way. And so we've set out a number of skills that we need the students to learn. And this one deals with both communication skills and legal matter management. So we look at things like cross-cultural communications, oral and written communication, legal writing and legal drafting, as well as managing. So initiating, planning, researching, and analyzing, and solving issues for clients. The next section of the framework deals with practice and self-management, so how the lawyer practices. So it looks at practice management skills. Students have an opportunity to learn about risk, trust management and trust accounting, organizing their practice management skills, technology that may be of assistance to the students as they move forward to ensure that they're properly managing their practice. We want to make sure that they understand how the practice works, and that they can have those skills to help contribute to their success as they move forward. We look at time management, project management, managing relationships with clients, and basically the students learning to practice law in the right way for the public, for the firms, and for themselves. And the third element of the framework is professional ethics and character. So who a lawyer is and how they behave. And this really focuses on code of conduct, character and professional responsibility, and professional ethics. And so the students learn about the code of conduct, decision-making for ethical issues, their duties as a fiduciary and their professional conduct, their need to protect confidentiality, avoid conflicts, and their continuing professional development, as well as non-discriminatory behavior. It's the afternoon for me now. I need to have a small drink. And being principled and respectful, and also, honesty, trustworthiness, all the things that build a strong relationship for the lawyer and also ensures that they're on side with respect to the Law Society. So based on that framework and those underpinnings, the prep program has a number of phases. So the first thing that students do before they actually enter any of the phases of the program is they complete some training in Procertas, which is a program that helps students work on their skills in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Adobe. And so they're asked to become an expert or qualified in at least Word and one other program. After they've completed that, then they enter into the foundation modules. And this is sort of the telling section and showing section of the program. After that, they move into the practice, which is the foundation workshops, which are in person or held virtually so that the students can work together. And then they move into the virtual law firm, which lets them perform and reflect and improve on their skills. And then finally, the capstone, which is their final assessment, where they need to demonstrate that they've acquired the skills of an entry-level lawyer to be successful. And there is a considerable amount of time commitment, as you can see from the slide, in each of these phases. And we'll talk about the phases more detail in a few minutes. The program overall right now is 9 months, and the hour commitment in total is somewhere between 275 and 294 hours for the student to complete. So as I said, the first phase after they complete their Procertas training is the foundation modules, which is the tell phase. And this is really the phase where the students start to gain the knowledge that they need in order to understand the competencies and be prepared to perform those competencies. So We have a number of modules that they do online. It's self-directed learning. There are interactive components throughout to assist the students to make sure that they're gaining an understanding of the content in each of the modules. The very first module that they deal with is the effective lawyer, and they look at having a personal code of conduct. At the end of all of the other modules, there is a 30-question quiz that the students have to pass to continue on to the next module. And that's to ensure that we know that they've gained the necessary level of knowledge that they're going to need as they move forward. At the end of the foundation modules, there are 2 multimedia modules, which are lawyer skills in action and practice management in action. And those are opportunities for the students to see the skills in action. So there are a number of videos, it's interactive, they do some assignments, and they begin to start to apply the things that they've learned through the foundation modules and start to prepare themselves so that they're ready to enter the next phase, which is the foundation workshops. So the foundation workshops are interactive workshops. They will either be run in person, or currently due to COVID, we're running them virtually through our Bongo platform. And students have an opportunity to do role playing where they interview each other, negotiate with each other, and do oral advocacy. They also do exercises in legal writing and drafting and research where they have an opportunity to review each other's work, compare them to the assessment criteria that we've created for each of those, and work on improving their skills. We also do large and small group discussions and debrief each of the exercises that the students do. As I said, they do peer assessment, so they're learning from each other and learning about the assessment criteria that'll be used as they move into the subsequent phases of prep. It's also an opportunity for the students to network and get to know each other and individuals that they may be working with in the future. As I said, it's an application of what they've learned in the foundation modules. And really, this is meant to prepare the students for the virtual law firm. So they've had an opportunity to test out their skills, learn from their challenges and their successes and from each other before moving forward into the virtual law firm. The virtual law firm, the students return to an online setting, and this is really all about them doing. They're given scenarios in 3 practice areas: business law, criminal law, family law, and real estate. And these assignments come from a fictional supervising lawyer. It's set up in a format where the students receive emails and a fictional email box, which gives them instructions about what they're supposed to do, together with any documents they might need to carry out those assignments. Each assignment has a deadline. The students have to submit the assignment, and then the assignments are assessed by our virtual law firm assessors. The students also have an opportunity during the virtual law firm at the end of each rotation to meet with their practice manager to help them work on developing their skills and looking at areas that they had challenges and what they can do to improve those. Students will interview in this section virtual clients or simulated clients. So individuals who are trained not only to assess the students, but to play the role of the client. They get to work on negotiation, again, writing and drafting and research and advocacy. And they'll also have opportunities to look at some ethical issues and client relationship management issues, as well as the need for them to do their practice management. So they use practice management software called Clio during this section to keep track of their time, to carry out various tasks such as entering retainers, entering meetings, doing conflict searches, those types of things. So they begin to get used to using that type of software and taking and completing practice management tasks. So the last phase is the capstone, and this is the high stakes assessment for the students. At this point, they will have worked through the prior 3 phases. And this phase is similar to the virtual law firm in how the materials are delivered to the students. but it's assessed a little differently. So all the oral skills are actually assessed in person, whether that's virtually or actually in the room with the student. So interviewing, oral advocacy, and negotiation, there's someone present actually assessing the student live. All the written assignments, legal drafting, legal writing, research, any sort of practice or client management or ethics is all submitted as they did during the virtual law firm and is assessed off-site. Students basically at this point will also need to, spend some time doing a reflection. So part of the capstone assessment is that they spend the last day reflecting on their performance through the program, where they'd like to go or what they think that they're going to do as they enter the practice of law, and then developing a professional development plan to get them started in preparation. So in total, the capstone is 4 days, and the days run mostly from 8 till 5. There isn't any homework because the students need to complete each task during the day. And then they spend the first 3 days actually working on their simulations, and the 4th day they work on their reflection. The results for the students are released approximately 6 weeks after they've completed their capstone. So in order to carry out all of these different phases, we need the assistance of lawyers who can help in its delivery. So the first role that I'm going to talk about is the foundation workshop facilitator. And really that person's role is to facilitate the 5 days of the foundation workshop. You usually have up to 32 students. And as I said, this might actually be in person or it could be run online through Bongo, which we use in our virtual law firm. And basically it is small group and large group discussions and projects. The students do a lot of group work, and the facilitator's role is basically to help the students move through each task, and at the end of each task to make sure that they do a debrief, answer questions that the students may have, as well as basically giving the students, some feedback from things that they've observed while watching the students do the various activities. You don't necessarily need to be an expert in the skills that are covered. We do have a handbook to assist, and there will be training for facilitators prior to the session, both with respect to sort of what the content is, as well as to the technology that we're using. As I said, the students do a lot of small group activities where they assess each other, watch each other, and assist each other in working on their skills. It does take, it is a very full week for the students, and they can be, they're quite tired by the end of it because they're really working hard on practicing those skills. If you're looking or interested in facilitating, facilitators can commit to that entire 5-day week or some portion of the week. The only thing that we really ask for facilitators is that they do adhere to the handbook for the content, because that to create consistency for the students and to make sure the students all receive the information they need that prepares them for the virtual law firm. So someone who's interested in facilitating would need to be a lawyer who has practiced for a minimum of 5 years in Alberta, Manitoba, Northwest Territories, Nova Scotia, Nunavut, or Saskatchewan. And you would, and who has some facilitation skills. The compensation for facilitating is $1,000 per day. And the training for this is a 2.5-hour training session, which will take place in September, and then work will begin mid-October. And training is required in order for someone to proceed and actually facilitate, as well as for someone to be compensated. You do, because we are doing this currently online because of COVID, need to have a reliable source of high-speed internet, a computer with a camera, and a microphone. So the next role takes place in our virtual law firm, and that's the virtual law firm assessor. And that person assesses assignments submitted by the students during one or all of those rotations in business law, criminal law, family law, and real estate. You can select to assess in one or all of the rotations, but you have to assess a full rotation because you'll be assigned a student group that you'll follow through the rotations. You don't necessarily need to have experience in a particular practice area. We do have assessment guides to assist you, and we hold calibration meetings with respect to the assessments to talk about what the expectations are and what the content should be from the students. You will be receiving deliverables from the students over a 2-week period. There's not a requirement that they all be marked as soon as they're received. There is usually a marking deadline, which is about a week after the students actually finish all the submissions. But you will be looking at not only written submissions, but also oral or video submissions where the students have recorded oral advocacy, the students or court submissions for the oral, and then the students will do a number of written assignments, everything from retainers to briefs that they'll be submitting. Each rotation includes 5 to 8 assignments, depending. And as I said, we do have sample assignments, and we also run plagiarism protection software on the written submissions to detect any issues or breaches there. So the qualifications with respect to the virtual law firm assessor, again, is someone who's had minimum practice experience for 5 years. Again, in the provinces I mentioned, Alberta, Manitoba, Northwest Territories, Nova Scotia, Nunavut, and or Saskatchewan. Each rotation, because of the different numbers of assignments, has a different level of commitment, but we are asking people to minimally commit to 5 students to ensure that you have an opportunity to really get an idea when you're assessing of what's actually out there from the students and get them more comfortable with the assignments. The business law rotation compensation is $150 per student. The criminal law rotation is also $150 per student. And the family law and real estate is a longer rotation, and it's a $240 compensation per student. Virtual law firm assessors, again, need to attend a training, which is an 1.5-hour orientation session, as well as the calibration session for each of the virtual law firms, which usually lasts somewhere between 1 hour and 2 hours, depending on the number of assignments. And that those sessions, the training and calibration sessions, are required, and there's not separate compensation with respect to those. Again, you're going to want to have access to reliable high-speed connection. So just talking a little bit more about the virtual law firm assessor role. There are 4 assignments for assessment in business, 5 in criminal, and 7 in the family law and real estate rotation. So in business law, the students do legal research, they write an opinion letter, they create a negotiation plan, and they complete a contract. In the criminal section, they do a retainer letter. They record themselves providing advice to the client. They do legal research on sentencing ranges and provide a legal memorandum to the supervising lawyer. And then they make a court submission on sentencing for the client. The family law rotation begins with the students creating a petition or statement of claim for divorce. They then do legal research on mobility and create a brief. They have a short negotiation exercise where they view a video, and then they paraphrase and reiterate for the individual what their interests were, so what they identified as that person's interests based on that conversation. They do a court submission on mobility. They then prepare a property agreement in draft. And finally, they do a short exercise in real estate dealing with the sale of the family home, where they create the various statements, a direction to pay, and a reporting letter. When you're assessing in the virtual law firm, we have set assessment criteria for each of the skills. And each skill is then broken down into various criterion that the students have to demonstrate. And each criterion has a descriptor for what would be considered a no competence versus entry level or exceeding competence. So the students are ranked in each of those criterion based on those descriptors. They're also provided for each assignment an overall assessment result. So based on the overall product, the assessor would also provide them with whether or not they felt the submission was nominally competent, reaching competent, or potentially exceeding competence. What the students are actually striving for is entry-level competence. And usually in the first rotation, they're not expected to be there. There will be some students on some of the activities that will be there. But the intention is that as they learn and gain their feedback throughout the virtual law firm, that by the end of that time, they will actually have achieved entry-level competence in each of the skills and be ready to move on to the capstone. So the next role is practice manager, and practice managers assist during the virtual law firm, and they provide mentoring and coaching for a group of students. They need to commit for the full 3 rotations because they're going to follow those students through all 3 rotations. Minimum commitment is 5 students. And they spend some time assessing the students' practice management skills. So they would look at the students' CLIO entries and make sure that they're have properly completed all the tasks that were assigned, as well as I said, providing coaching and mentoring for the student. So they need to, before each meeting with the student, review the student's assignments, see how the student performed on those assignments. They will receive an agenda from the student, and then they'll meet with the student for a 30-minute video call where the student actually leads the meeting, and the practice manager provides some assistance in helping the student process their feedback and come up with methods of attack for improving their performance as they go into future rotations, or at the end of the last rotation, discussing with them best ways to prepare for the capstone. Again, practice managers will receive training, both with respect to what is expected from the students in the practice management software, as well as how the students are assessed and how those meetings might run. As I said, those individuals need to commit themselves to approximately 3 hours per student over the 3-month period. So after each rotation, approximately half an hour to review the submissions from the student, half an hour to meet with the student. They need to commit to follow the student throughout the full virtual law firm. It would be helpful if they had either formal or informal experience mentoring young lawyers. They also need to practice in the provinces and territories that I mentioned earlier and have a minimum of 5 years experience. Compensation for practice managers is $225 per student. And as I said, there will be training that will give them an orientation to the program and their role. And the training, again, is not compensated. It's considered part of the requirements for the position. Again, they'll be using our Bongo, which is our communication or virtual classroom software to meet with the students. So you need to make sure that you have reliable high-speed internet connection and a computer with a camera and a microphone. The last, the last position that I'm going to talk about is capstone assessor. And those are assessors that will complete assessments of the students during the capstone, which is the high stakes assessment for the student. These assessments take place, like I said, over a 4-day period where the students are working on a simulation during that time. There's 2 types of assessors, one being in-person assessors. So those would be the ones that would be present while the students are exhibiting their oral skills, so negotiation and advocacy. The students do interviewing with the simulated clients. And then we would also have off-site assessors who would deal with all the written submissions. So legal writing, legal drafting, any ethics, client management, or practice management, CLIO submissions. The individuals will be trained with respect to our competency assessment criteria, as well as given some information about the scenario and how to give constructive feedback. There are meetings throughout the capstone to calibrate on assignments. Because each capstone is unique, calibration has to take place based on the assignments submitted by the students who are actually completing the capstone. And again, we need individuals who come from the the provinces and territories that I indicated earlier and have that 5 years of minimum experience. Also, in order to be able to assess in the capstone, you need to assess in one of the rotations of the virtual law firm. And this allows you to become familiar not only with how we assess and the assessment criteria, but also with the technology that we use for the purposes of assessment. Compensation for capstone assessors is $30 per assessment. And training, again, will be an orientation, which will be approximately an hour. As I said, talking about what the scenario is and preparing assessors for what the assignments are for the students, as well as the need for all assessors to attend the various calibration meetings, which will take place mostly throughout the capstone week where the students are working. There is, again, no compensation for the trainings or orientation or calibration meetings, as those are considered part and parcel of the requirements for the position. Again, you're going to need a computer with reliable high speed, especially if you're doing oral assessments. And if you're doing oral assessments, you'll also want to have a camera or a microphone. So that's a quick overview of the various positions. If you're interested in applying, you can go to the Join the Team section of CPLED's website and select what you'd like to do and make your application there. If you have any questions while you're completing your application, or if you have some other questions while you're thinking about applying, you can certainly contact us at CPLED and we'll do our best to answer those questions for you. But we are going to have an opportunity now to address some questions. So Carly, who's our communication advisor, will now pose some questions that you've asked during the session. And you can also continue to submit questions using the question section of the control panel. And we'll do our best to answer all the questions that you have. So Carly, if you'd like to go ahead with the first question.
Thanks, Erica. Maybe get a drink of water. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just the first question is, I just wanted to clarify that I am able to take on more than one role within prep. So for example, could I be a foundation, workshop facilitator, and capstone assessor?
So you can take on more than one role. The only pre-requirement as far as being a capstone assessor is to make sure that you've assessed in the virtual law firm. So, pardon me. Basically, it's really dependent on the time that you have available based on the schedule for the program. So we do have individuals that do small pieces. We have individuals who do multiple roles.
Great. And then our next question we got, Erica, is what is the deadline for applying for these positions?
We're currently in recruitment and we're always keeping an eye out for people so that we do have a base of individuals in the event, even if we fill positions in the event, so that we have backup individuals. So you can apply throughout the year and someone will be in touch. It may just be, depending when you apply, it may be some time before that role is actually needed, depending on the schedule.
When working as a practice manager, will students have access to contact me outside of the scheduled practice manager mentorship meetings?
So students are only allowed to contact their practice manager during their practice management meeting. And they're only permitted to actually send their agenda and their link to the meeting to the practice manager. We basically discourage any sort of contact outside of that, simply because of the extra and additional time that would place on the practice manager. And also just to make sure that no student feels that another is receiving more attention or care or direction than another student. So we like to limit it to the time that's been set, and students are made aware that that is the time that they have with their practice manager.
Next question is, when will we find out if we're being considered for a position we've applied for?
So if you're being considered, you'll be contacted so that you know that you're on the list. Everyone is checked through their law society. So we request the law societies provide us with a recommendation, which can take a little bit of time. And then once we know that the person has been approved or recommended by the law society, someone will be in touch with them about scheduling what sessions they could cover and number of students if they're doing assessment.
When working as a virtual law firm assessor, will all student assessments be released to me on the same day?
So all the assessments are actually available as they become due. So there's multiple due dates throughout the virtual law firm for each of the assignments. So as soon as the first assignment is due, it's then available to assessors to assess. And so you're able to assess the assignments as they're submitted. And then there's like approximately a 1 week time frame after the last assignment is submitted to complete all the assessments and have those posted and available so that the feedback can be given back to the students.
You mentioned to be a virtual law firm assessor that you don't need to have experience in the particular practice area. Can you just elaborate on that, just especially considering family law is jurisdictionally specific?
Yeah, so we do have sample answers for the various assignments and direction about what you're supposed to look for. Some people will feel more comfortable assessing in areas that they're familiar with. But we have set it up in a way that if it is an area that you're not familiar with, there is enough material there, and between that and the calibration meeting that you'll have a good understanding of what you're looking for. I assessed in the pilot, and my prior practice experience is really family law, real estate, wills and estates. Those are the big areas, although because I worked in a small firm, I did do some other areas. I had limited criminal exposure, but I didn't find that it was overly difficult to assess the students in the criminal with an idea of, with a basis of what I was looking for. And also because many of the skills that you're looking for are transferable. So a good oral submission is going to be a good oral submission if the students know sort of the technique for delivering it. And so if I have an idea of what the content is supposed to be, the rest of the skill would be similar to making a submission in any other area of the law.
So that is the last question we have right now, Erica. If anyone else has any additional questions, please go ahead and type them into the question section, and we'll ask those to Erica. It doesn't look like there's any more, Erica, so go ahead and wrap up. I think if anyone does have any additional questions, feel free to send us an email at admin@cpled.ca, and we'll make sure we get back to you within 24 hours, Monday to Friday.
Great, thanks, Carly. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming today. Oh, my slideshow has decided to take on a life of its own. So thank everybody for coming. Please remember to fill out the short survey that's going to pop up at the end of the webinar. A version of the webinar has been recorded, and we will be posting it on CPLED's website. please, like I said, remember to complete the survey, and thank you all for coming and joining me. Please feel free to send any questions that you might have. As Carly mentioned, we're looking forward to have an opportunity to work with as many lawyers and have them involved in the program. So thank you.